In this video, we're going to be learning how to use ChatGPT with Adalo. First, we'll do it directly from Adalo, and then we'll be using Xano because it's kind of necessary if you want a full conversation. But at a basic level, you could do a one-shot completion directly from Adalo, so that's what we'll start with. Also, if you didn't see my previous video about using that OpenAI API, that would be a really good start before watching this one. So let's get going. So what we'll be doing, instead of using the complete mode in OpenAI, we'll be using chat mode. Okay, and you'll probably have this one available, 3.5 Turbo, or if you're invited to the beta for the API, maybe you've got GPT-4. As you can see here, you have a user message and then you have a system message, which is kind of some background context for ChatGPT. And then you can even add assistant messages here. But what we're going to do, we're going to go straight to the API documentation. Okay, so we've got this reference and we will be using the chat one here. But before we get started, I just want to show you something quite quickly that you might want to do at some point. Imagine you want a user to pick which model they're going to use. I just wanted to really quickly show you how you'd go about that. So it has a models list here, and you can see that is the endpoint we're going to use. So how would you get a list of models onto your Adalo app? So I'm going to just copy that endpoint there and show you how to do it. Okay, now I've already done it there. I'll delete it and redo it for you. So what we're going to do, we're going to add an external collection, OpenAI models, and our base URL will be what I've just copied there. And then we need authorization bearer and our API key. To get your API key, it is over here. Okay, I'll create a new key and copy it. Okay, so if I test that now, we should now be getting a list of the models. Okay, and we can see the models have come back in a response, but there is an error that occurred. And the reason for this is that we need to use the data here. We need to go into this nested list. And the way we do that is we go back on the get all, we're going to have a results key of data. Okay, and test is successful. And what that means now is we've got an external collection of OpenAI models. So if we make a custom list now, we can have a list of OpenAI models, and let's just say the title could be the root, and the subtitle could be the object. Let's preview the app and see what we've got. There we go, these are the models. So you could use this to let the user select which model they want to use. But I thought that was just a very quick and easy demo in case you wanted to pull in data from a list from OpenAI. Let's get to the actual ChatGPT part of it. So over here we go to chat, and this here is telling us the format of what it's going to look like when we do it. Okay, so let's get straight into that. I'm going to copy the endpoint there, come back to Adalo and maybe have a button, and here we will create, here we will have a custom action. I'm just going to call it ChatGPT completion. and it will be a create action. Okay, yeah, it is a post. This is a post action. So there's our base URL, and then post. And then we're going to need our API key again. Okay, and we need a content type application JSON. Okay, and then we need these here. We need the model and we need messages, which is here it's an array. So we're going to structure it like this. Okay, we're going to have model. Okay, and let's use GPT 3.5 Turbo for now. Okay, and we can hard code that, or we could use it as an input and get it from that list if you wanted the user maybe to select their own model. And the next thing is the messages. Okay, as you can see, it's an array with a message object inside it. So you have role and then content. Okay, maybe we can add some inputs here. Content. Okay, so just some random, what time is it, maybe? So just some random content that we can put in so that we actually get a response from the API. Okay, so maybe that is ready for testing now, if that's formatted okay. Okay, it's saying I didn't provide an API key. Let's go back and just check our authorization header. Now we have provided an API key, but it could be this space here that always goes wrong with copy and paste. So I delete and make it again, and hopefully that sorted our problem. And it did. Okay, so you can see we've got all of these things back, and this one here, choices message content, is the kind of valuable part of the response here. All right, and it's actually can't tell us the time because it does not have access to it. But anyway, that is a response from ChatGPT, really as simple as that. So we could have an input field, and the button that generates it generates a response and calls the custom action. So let's go back to that custom action. Okay, and the content will be that input. Okay, and then maybe we could have that linked to a new screen, maybe a modal. Create, there we go. Okay, so let's have it linked to a modal, which is going to show us the response. Okay, so we'll have an input field here, call it response, and I'm going to make this multi-line in the styles. Okay, and what we'll do on the button is we will change input value, all screens, and this the new screen of the response, to the custom action response, choices, oh, not that one I don't think, Yeah, this last one, isn't it? Okay, so maybe we can try that out. Okay, what color is an elephant? Okay, and here is our response from ChatGPT. Now you might ask, why am I showing you this if it seems very similar to the Da Vinci completion from the last video? Well, one big reason is ChatGPT is 10% of the cost, right? So even if you're doing just one shot and it's not a conversation, it's worth using ChatGPT over the normal completion models. So you will want to do this. But the problem we've got next is to make this more complicated. If you look at our structure of the JSON here, this is an array of messages. That means that ChatGPT also can read previous messages. On Adalo, that is difficult to achieve. We're going to struggle to populate our custom action with previous messages. And for this, I would suggest using Xano. So what we're going to do, we're going to try putting together on Xano a conversational chat with ChatGPT. Now, there is a Xano integration out now which requires the team plan, but that is only if you want to have your users on Xano. You can use Xano and follow this tutorial completely for free. The only thing with the free version of Xano is it's rate limited. But for testing purposes, that is going to be fine. So what you want to do is go to Xano, you want to create yourself an account, and then let's just have a quick think what we're going to need. So on Xano, we are going to need some things in the database. We're going to need a list of conversations and I assume a list of messages. Okay, so a message is going to belong to the conversation. And a conversation is a conversation with ChatGPT. Okay, so let's start putting that together. I'm going to go to the database and add a table, conversations. Okay, and I guess it will automatically have an ID created, and then we also need a table for messages. Now, for the messages, we're going to need our role and the content. Okay, and we also need to know which conversation it is part of. So here I'm going to do a table reference to conversations. One thing with Xano is if you're using the default settings, that will have already set up for me some endpoints for these. So we've got a conversations endpoint set up with all of these, and we will also have the same for messages, which is here. So we'll be looking at that soon. The first thing we probably want to do is go to our conversation getAll endpoint, copy the URL, and we're going to add that as a collection into Adalo. Before we do, we just want to make sure there are some conversations there already, so that Adalo can detect data coming through. Okay, so we're going to add a couple of records so that Adalo sees something coming back from the API request. So here we'll go to our database. Let's remove the models. That was an example. We're not going to use it. Okay, and we're going to add an external collection, Xano conversations. Base URL is like that, and I didn't add any security to it, so it's there shouldn't need to be any additional parameters. There we go. We've got our two conversations back, and we've got our external collection there. Okay, and then we will want to do the same for messages. Okay, let's add sample data. Okay, and then we can also create a relationship to which conversation he's a part of. So let's go back here, and we're going to be adding another collection. Go back to our API groups, find messages, get all, copy endpoint URL, Xano messages. Okay, and run a test. And there we go, we've got that. Okay, so now we've got conversations and messages. So what we want, I'm going to delete that screen, I'm going to delete everything we've got already. And what we want is a list of conversations. Okay, and I'm just going to have the ID there and the created date as a subtitle. Okay, and on the right section, let's have a right arrow, and that's going to be taking us to the conversation screen. Alternatively, they could have a button which is going to create a new conversation. Okay, let's just try and align that a bit to the list. Okay, the new conversation is going to create a Xano conversation, and then we're going to link to a new screen which will be called chat. Okay, and also the list will go to the same screen. Link to chat. So now our chat page will have available data of current Xano conversation. So what do you think we want next? We're going to need a list of messages. Okay, and this is a list of Xano messages. The title is going to be, we'll have the role and then the content. Okay, so if we go back to our app now, we've got our two conversations, and if we go here, we've got user saying hello. Okay, now if you remember on the database, these should be in different conversations, so we shouldn't be displaying both of them. And for that, what we need to do is go to our API and then go back to our messages, our get all messages API endpoint. And we only want to return the messages for that current conversation. So I'm going to add an input on the function stack here, conversation ID. All right, and then on our function stack, we're going to have custom query, conditional. Okay, so where the message conversation ID is the same as input conversation ID. Okay, before it's going to work outside of testing in Xano, you always need to hit this publish. So let's run that. Okay, so let's run. And there's no results because I didn't put in a conversation ID. But if we change that to 1, we're expecting 1 result. Okay, and again, if I change that to conversation ID is 2, we get the other message. Okay, so we also need to add that conversation ID as a parameter in Adalo. So let's go back to our list and add conversation ID as a query parameter, and the value is going to be current Xano conversation ID, and then everything should be filtering correctly. Okay, we should see 1 message. Okay, that's good. Now the next thing is, let's make sure the messages are coming back in the order that we want. Okay, so the way we'll do that is going to our query all record stack, output, and then we need to add some sorting, and it will be the created at, okay, and I think descending. Okay, now just to test I got that the right way around, I'm going to go back to our messages, and now I'm going to add a new record, user hello. Okay, and I'm going to make them all the same conversation 1, and we want to make sure that the newest one is coming back first. So let's try. Okay, let's just add here, we've got our role, and then let's have in the corner maybe have the created date. Align that to the right. Let's go back to our app. It's strange that only that one has the created date. Let's have a look. The label's not in the list. Simple as that. Okay. So that should be the message creation date. Let's try again. Okay, test one more time. There we go. So the most recent message is at the top. Okay, finally. All right, so we've got our messages displaying. Now we need to actually be sending the messages to ChatGPT and getting a response. So how do we go about this? What we'll need to do, we will need, let's move that down a bit. We're going to be having a text input. Okay, user message and our button to execute it, but instead of we may not need a custom action this time, although let's see how it runs first. But if we look at our API, we're going to have our create message API. Okay, so we've got our query all messages, but we've also got an add messages record. Well, when we add a message, we always want to be sending that to OpenAI. But on top of that, we also want to be getting the message history. So what we need to do here is get query all records in messages, where the conversation ID is the input conversation ID. Okay, and then we also just want to make sure the output is sorted. Let's do create start descending. Okay, so that's going to get all the conversation messages. Now, I want to see what that looks like, how that is structured. So let's have a utility function, and we're going to stop and debug, and we're going to return that variable. Okay, so we're going to add a message. It's just going to be blank, but let's see what the stop and debug brings us. Okay, so there we go. We've got our list of messages back. Okay, the newest is first. It's got the highest ID. Okay, and this is kind of what we need to be sending to OpenAI. All right, so let's go back to here. It wants role and the content. Now here we've got role and we've got content, but we've also got this other stuff that we don't necessarily want. Okay, so an easy way to do this might be to go on our query all records and go to output and customize it so that we've only got the role and the content coming back. Okay, so if we run that again, you can see we've already got our array structured as we would like it to be here. Okay, I think so anyway. I think this is looking good. All right, so now we can go back to our function stack, okay, and we can use our messages.one in the next step, which is to call the OpenAI API. To do this, we're going to go external API request, and we've got a really nice shortcut here, which is just to copy that example request in curl format. Okay, let's copy that and import. Okay, and that's imported everything in the correct format. Okay, now we will need to add our OpenAPI key. And one way I suggest we do this is you can add it as an environment variable, but in this case I'm just going to do a simple concatenation. So we've got authorization bearer, and I'm going to concat. Okay, there's going to be a space, and then the value is going to be the API key, like that. Now we've got the role. Okay, when we call this, our role is always going to be the user because it's a new user message, and then the content needs to come from messages. Okay, so for the content, we will take a variable messages dot content. Okay, so now when a new message is added, we get the message history and we'll be sending that to OpenAI. Actually, I need to correct something here. So I've actually just set the content as one, as an individual. We've only got one object here, but of course this is supposed to be an array, a whole array of messages. So in fact, I can delete all of this here, okay, back to the messages path. Okay, and hopefully that's going to send through the whole message history. So let's just add a new example message and see what is going to come out. Okay, and in fact, let's have the response to the API request here. Let's make sure it's in our response. Okay, and then we're going to see what we're getting back from OpenAI. Okay, how many legs do elephants have? Okay, let's see. Okay. We've got a problem here that we had a couple of blank records. Okay, so we can just go ahead and delete these from the database because OpenAI does not like that we're sending these blank records without a role or content. So if I delete those two and rerun it, everything should be working now. So I'm going to rerun. States 200 choices. Okay, and it said, how may I assist you today? Okay, and that must be because it's reading this message on the bottom, not the top one. So maybe if we just go back to our query or records, and instead of having created at descending, we'll have it ascending. And maybe that will solve our problem. So let's rerun. elephants have 4 legs. Okay, finally. So we've now put it together. So when you add a new message, we are getting the correct response. Okay. And we've got a conversation history. So the next part will be to add the response from ChatGPT. So we're going to add to our function stack here. Before we do, just we want to double check that again. Okay, so what we're going to have later, we're going to have to remember this, so just maybe scribble it down. But we're going to need API1 dot response dot result. Okay, so I've opened Notepad here. Okay, and what we're going to be using later is API1 dot response dot result dot choices dot message dot content. That should be what we need in a minute. Okay, to add our new our response. Okay, so database request, we're going to add a record. It's going to be a message record. Okay, and the role is here will be assistant. Okay, should be correct. Yep, assistant. Okay, so the role will be assistant, and the content will be API1.response result choices.message. Okay, and we need to make sure we click on here the var. Okay, because at the moment it's taking that as text, but as soon as we click that, it's now taking it as the API1 variable. Okay, so we've gone through quite a lot there, and as well as API, maybe instead of returning API1 now, we can just return that messages to variable. Okay, something it doesn't like that. Okay, but now it's okay. All right, so we're going to do that again. How many legs do cats have? Okay, so we've encountered an error here, and it's probably a very good thing this happened, so I can show you how to look what's happened. Okay, so we can go to the debugger. Now, the problem it's had is with the add record. Okay, that's the last thing here. Something there threw an error. And it says text filter requires a scalar value. Okay, let's have a look here. So we did get our inputs. We've got created out, we've got role, okay, so for content, it has, it's given an array, which isn't what we want. It looks like it's given an array rather than text. So, okay, so just to explain that, let's see why that might be. I'm also going to be returning API1, because, okay, I want to see what's happened now. Or in fact, it's going to stop and debug. And return API1. Okay. Okay, so we returned response, result, choices, message, and then content. The problem here is that you see choices is an array. And so it's going to assume that we're actually sending an array of data. And the easy way to sort this out is where we're adding the content, which should be text, we're going to add a filter first. Okay, get the first entry of an array. In this case, the array only has one item, but Xano isn't happy, of course, because it is seeing an array format for a text field. So if we run again, I think we can get rid of stop and debug and get rid of that response. So now we should only be getting our new message we're adding, which is the response from ChatGPT. Okay, there we go. Cats have 4 legs. All right, so this is looking good. This is looking quite complete. All right, so I think we can go back to Adalo now and test it out. Okay, hello assistant, are you there? Okay, one issue we've got, we didn't connect our button. Okay, so let's go to our button and add action, and it's going to create a Xano message. Okay, and the role will be user, and the content will be from that input field there. Conversations ID is current Xano conversation ID. Okay, let's preview and see what happens. Okay, it's working. All right, so we've got a new conversation. Okay, we've got user, we said, hello assistant, are you there? And the assistant said, hello, yes, I'm here, how can I assist you? Okay, now one thing I will do is just move these down so they're not going to clash with the created date, because that's a bit annoying. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, this is the new conversation we made down here. There we go. Hello assistant, are you there? Hello, I'm here, how can I help you? I want some advice for marketing my coffee shop. Okay, we've got an action cannot be completed. So something's went wrong with that API call. And that will be on the add messages record. So let's go to request history. And we had an internal server error here. Let's find out why. Let's go to output. Unable to locate variable api1.response.result choices message.content. So that looks like it was probably a failed API call. Okay. As you can see, it worked before, but I think that's a problem on OpenAI's end. I imagine if we try again, it might work. Right, so that was something that took me way longer than it should have done to figure out what had gone wrong. But quite simply, OpenAI, ChatGPT, doesn't like the prompt. It doesn't like me asking that prompt about marketing a coffee shop. This could be due to their policies, etc. that I've heard recently they're changing a lot in terms of what responses it will give, but it was particularly confusing that there was no response at all. But if I ask a different question, everything works fine. So let's just try this. Do cats have ears? And there we have a response. Then we could ask, are there any animals that don't have ears? Okay, and there we go. Everything is working exactly as we want it. So that was a bit of a tricky video compared to some other ones. I've never set up the ChatGPT API before. Xano is a bit more of a learning curve than just Adalo on its own, but if you are willing to have a play with it and get used to it, it's quite rewarding. It's very powerful software. I do plan to start bringing out more Xano materials. I might actually create a course on the Xano Adalo integration, so stay subscribed to my channel if you're interested in learning more about that. And if you have any particular topics with Xano or Adalo that you want to figure out, leave a comment below and let me know. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.